I still remember the smell of freshly baked scones and the chatter of relatives filling the conservatory of my family's country estate in Wiltshire. It was supposed to be a casual Sunday brunch, but the air was thick with tension I couldn't place at first. My mother had outdone herself, placing the antique silver out and fluffing the hydrangeas more than usual. That should have been my first clue. "Darling," she said, guiding me gently to the center of the room. "We have something wonderful to share." Standing beside her was Mr. Ashford, my father's childhood friend. And beside him, his son, Thomas Ashford, who gave me a stiff smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You and Thomas are to be engaged," my father announced, his tone final, as if he'd just informed me of tomorrow's weather. I choked on my tea. What? Everyone applauded, except me. Thomas and I barely knew each other. He'd studied law in Cambridge, spent summers in Italy, and occasionally visited our estate for drinks with my father. He wasn't cruel, just cold, the sort of person who said all the right things without ever meaning any of them. I'd never had a real conversation with him, let alone imagined marrying him. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, I confronted my parents. "You can't be serious," I said. "I have a life. A boyfriend." My mother's expression tightened. "A bartender from London? Don't be ridiculous, Eliza. This is about legacy." "It's about control," I muttered. But my father didn't flinch. "Thomas is respectable, successful. He will take care of you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But instead I whispered, "I won't do it." "Then don't bother coming home again," he replied. And just like that, my world shifted. I stood in the hallway, suitcase in hand, knowing I was about to give up everything, my family, my inheritance, my comfort, for a love they didn't approve of. But I also knew I couldn't live a lie. The train from Wiltshire to London felt longer than usual, though it sped through the countryside with its usual urgency. I sat in silence, clutching my phone, afraid to call Jamie just yet. I hadn't told him everything. Not about the engagement. Not about the ultimatum. I wasn't even sure he'd want me to show up like this. By the time I arrived at Liverpool Street Station, the sky had turned gray and heavy with rain. I dragged my suitcase through the wet pavements of Shoreditch, dodging puddles and late-night crowds, until I reached the narrow brick building Jamie called home, a third-floor walk-up above an independent bookstore. He opened the door with a confused look that quickly melted into worry. "Eliza? What happened?" I stepped inside, drenched, trembling. "Can I stay here?" He didn't ask questions, just wrapped his arms around me and let me cry. Jamie was everything Thomas wasn't. Warm, expressive, constantly scribbling lyrics into old notebooks or strumming his guitar in cafes. We'd met at a uni event and stayed close ever since. He didn't come from money, and he didn't pretend to be perfect. But when he looked at me, it felt real. Over the following weeks, I tried to settle into Jamie's world, one of chipped mugs, late-night rehearsals, and takeaway curries. It wasn't glamorous, but it was alive. And I felt free. That freedom, however, came at a cost. My father had my accounts frozen. My mother sent one icy message after another. Thomas, on the other hand, sent none. I got a part-time job at the bookstore downstairs, earning barely enough to cover groceries. I sold designer coats and jewelry I once thought I couldn't live without. Slowly, I began to understand what self-reliance really meant. But tension brewed beneath the surface. Jamie tried to hide it, but I could tell he felt the strain of sharing his tiny flat, of carrying the weight of our new reality. He was sweet, supportive, but there were moments his voice turned tight. One night, while folding laundry, I asked quietly, "Do you regret it? Me being here?" He looked up sharply. "No." "But I worry." "About what?" "That you left everything for me. That one day you'll resent it." I touched his hand. "I left because I had to. You were the only part of my life that made sense." Still, the silence after my words lingered. I couldn't tell if it was comfort or fear I saw in his eyes. London nights hummed differently in Jamie's flat, full of distant sirens, late buses, and the occasional guitar riff from the neighboring flat. I often lay awake, listening to the city breathe, wondering what Thomas was doing across town. Was he relieved? Angry? Or did he simply not care? But one morning, as I was shelving a new stack of paperbacks at the bookstore, a woman walked in who shattered the quiet. Tall, poised, with caramel-toned curls and a cashmere coat, she looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Eliza Morgan?" she asked crisply. I turned, heart pounding. "Yes." She handed me a card. "Margot Cavendish. I'm with Holloway and White, solicitors. Mr. Thomas Holloway requests a private conversation. No pressure, just clarity." I swallowed hard. "How did you find me?" Her smile was tight. "Thomas has his ways." She left before I could ask more. Later that evening, curiosity won. Jamie was out at a late rehearsal, and I found myself staring at the address on the card, a small firm based in Chelsea. The next day, I took the tube across the city and arrived at the quiet, polished office. It was nothing like the cold boardrooms of my father's firm. There was warmth in the lighting, a smell of fresh lilies in the waiting room. And then he walked in. Thomas looked different. Less polished, hair slightly tousled, tie missing. But his eyes were the same, sharp, unreadable. "Eliza," he said, sitting across from me. "I didn't expect you to come." I almost didn't. He nodded slowly. "I owe you an explanation." "Several, actually." I folded my arms. "You proposed to me, then vanished." I panicked. His voice cracked slightly. "Not about you. About what came with you. The money. The family pressure. The expectations." I laughed bitterly. "And you think I didn't feel the same?" His eyes met mine. "I loved you, but I didn't fight for you, and I should have." I stood up. "Too late for that now." As I turned to leave, he said something I didn't expect. "They're arranging a new match for you." I froze. "My father. And yours. Someone with more influence. Someone they think will steady you." Rage twisted in my chest. "Like I'm some negotiation deal?" He nodded. I tried to stop it, but you know how they work. As I walked out into the cold Chelsea afternoon, I realized two things. 1, Thomas still cared, in his own flawed way. 2, my battle had only just begun. A week passed in restless silence. Jamie noticed my unease, though he never pried. Instead, he made us tea, played old Beatles records, and offered the kind of comfort only a true friend could provide. But the comfort didn't last long. It came in the form of an envelope. Hand-delivered. No return address. I opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was a cream-colored invitation and a letter on thick, embossed paper. "Eliza, your father and I have come to an agreement with the Beckett family. You will meet their son, Jonathan, at the Guilford Club this Saturday. This match is in your best interest. Love, Mother." My hands trembled. Jamie read over my shoulder, his expression darkening. "Jonathan Beckett?" he muttered. "That arrogant prat from Eton?" I nodded mutely. Jamie leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "So that's their next move. Lining up the next pawn." I crumpled the letter. "I'm not going." But I did. Not because I wanted to, because I needed to know what I was up against. The Guilford Club oozed old money, crystal chandeliers, portraits of forgotten aristocrats, liveried waiters who looked right through you. I arrived in a simple navy dress, the only one I owned that even slightly resembled what my mother would deem appropriate. Jonathan was already there, sipping whiskey like he owned the place. "Eliza," he said with a smile too slick to be genuine. "A pleasure. Let's get this over with." He chuckled. "No need to be so sharp. Our families want the same thing. Prestige. Control. And, of course, a union that benefits both legacies." I stared at him. "You talk like this is a merger." "It is. Just not on paper." I pushed my chair back. "I'm not for sale." But he wasn't listening. "You'll come around. You've been raised for this, whether you like it or not." Outside, I breathed in the cold London air, willing it to clear my head. I didn't realize someone had followed me until I heard the voice. "You met him then?" "Thomas." I turned slowly. "How did you know?" My father told me. He thinks the match is brilliant. Called you a final asset worth salvaging. I looked at him, something breaking loose inside me. Do you know what it's like to be spoken of like that? Like a prize pig at auction. Thomas stepped closer.
Yes.
I do. That's why I left. His voice dropped lower. But maybe it's time we stop running and start fighting. And for the first time, I didn't walk away. I listened. The following days passed in a haze of tension. I couldn't stop replaying Thomas's words in my mind. Start fighting. It sounded so simple. But fighting meant defiance. And defiance in my family meant exile. Still, something had shifted in me. I began to meet Thomas in secret, always in hidden corners of the city where no one would recognize us. Old bookshops in Bloomsbury, a ruined chapel near Hampstead Heath, and our favorite, a locked garden behind an abandoned estate on the outskirts of Richmond. Overgrown roses spilled across mossy stone, and a broken bench sat beneath a twisted oak. We called it ours. It was in that garden that I learned the truth. You need to know something, Thomas said one afternoon, fingers brushing the ivy as he spoke. About your father. And mine. I turned to him. What is it? They weren't just friends. They were business partners. Silent ones. Dirty money, Eliza. From developments that evicted hundreds in the East End. From offshore accounts that disappeared overnight. I stared at him, heart pounding. My father used your name. Set up accounts when you were barely 18. You're tied to it. If this ever comes to light. I staggered back. That's not possible.
He took my hand.
It is. I've seen the papers. I stole copies. My breath caught. They've made me complicit. Thomas nodded. That's why your mother's pushing the marriage. It's not about legacy anymore. It's about keeping you quiet.
The garden spun around me.
I felt sick. Used. But I wasn't broken. We need proof, I said. Real proof. If I'm going down, I want the truth to go with me. Thomas reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn folder. Inside were photographs, bank statements, signatures I recognized, including my own.
Forged.
We spread them out on the bench, the wind flicking the corners like impatient fingers. Your father kept the originals in his study. Hidden behind a false panel in the bookshelf, Thomas said. If we get them, we expose them all. He nodded grimly. Suddenly, a branch cracked nearby. We froze. Someone was watching. We packed the papers in silence and left the garden separately, just as we'd always done. But this time, I felt eyes on my back the entire walk home. The fight had truly begun. Back at home, everything felt sharper. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. The creak of the third stair from the top. Even Mother's perfume, once comforting, now seemed cloying, like something masking decay. I kept Thomas's folder hidden under a loose floorboard in my bedroom. Every night, I checked it twice, terrified it would vanish, terrified I'd wake to find it burned or missing. The house felt like it was closing in, like the walls themselves could whisper secrets. One evening, after dinner, Father summoned me to his study. He rarely spoke more than necessary, but his eyes tonight were dark, probing. I hear you've been spending time in Richmond, he said quietly. I kept my face calm. Just walks. Alone? Yes. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I hope you're not letting foolish ideas distract you from your responsibilities. I know my responsibilities, I replied, matching his tone. There was a pause. Good, he said, tapping his pen against the desk. Because we've moved the engagement forward. The announcement will go out next week. My breath caught. What? Arthur's family agreed. It's better to act swiftly before certain uncertainties emerge. So they were rushing to tie things up before anything leaked. Before their lies reached the light. My stomach churned. That night, I crept into Father's study after everyone had gone to bed. The room smelled of cigar smoke and old paper. I ran my fingers along the bookshelf until I found it, a small ridge that shouldn't be there. The false panel clicked open. Behind it, 2 ledgers, a stack of sealed envelopes, and a USB drive. My hands shook as I stuffed them into my satchel. But as I turned to leave, the lamp flicked on. Mother stood in the doorway. Her eyes locked onto mine. "Eliza." She said nothing more, just my name, sharp as a knife. I froze. "You've no idea what you're getting into," she whispered. "Put them back. Walk away." "No," I said. "I won't. You think Thomas loves you? He's using you, just like his father used mine." I stepped past her. "If that's true, then let the truth bury us both."
She didn't follow.
Upstairs, I texted Thomas one word.
Got it.
We had the proof. But now, everyone knew we were playing the game. And the shadows in my home were starting to move. The night after I took the files, the air in the house grew heavier, thick with tension like the sky before a storm. I avoided Father at all costs, staying mostly in my room, claiming headaches or long baths. Mother hadn't said a word to me since catching me in the study. Not a glance, not a breath. Thomas arranged for us to meet at a forgotten railway tunnel just outside the village, long overgrown and unused. It was the only place we could be sure no one would follow or overhear. I wrapped the USB drive and ledgers tightly in an old scarf and tucked them inside my coat. When I arrived, Thomas was already there, his silhouette tense against the tunnel's stone mouth. He took one look at my face and pulled me into a tight embrace. "You did it," he whispered. "I did," I replied, though it felt like I'd aged a decade since. We laid out the documents on a makeshift table of crates. By the light of his torch, we pored over them. Accounts of shell companies, bribes disguised as legal fees, and names. So many names. My father's signature was everywhere. "These alone would ruin him," Thomas said. "And your father too," I added. He looked away. "I know, but this is bigger than my family." We agreed to make multiple copies. One for the press. One for a solicitor Thomas trusted in London. One for safekeeping, hidden in the one place no one would think to look. As I was about to leave, Thomas stopped me. "There's more," he said. He reached into his coat and handed me a photograph, folded and worn. It was a picture of my mother, younger, standing beside a man who wasn't my father. My heart thudded. "Who is he?" I asked. "That's William Hargrave. He died 23 years ago. A whistleblower who vanished before he could testify. That's the last known photo of him. Your mother was with him 2 weeks before he disappeared." I stared at it, my mind racing. What if your mother wasn't just a pawn? Thomas said carefully. "What if she's been part of it all along?" "No," I breathed. "She wouldn't." But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. Everything I thought I knew was turning to ash. And in the ashes, something darker stirred, a truth we hadn't yet uncovered. Back home, sleep evaded me. I lay awake, haunted by the image of my mother smiling beside that man, William Hargrave. I kept hearing Thomas's voice. What if she's been part of it all along? I couldn't believe it. Wouldn't. But I needed answers. The next day, I waited until the house was silent. Mother had gone to her weekly charity luncheon. Father was locked away in his study. I crept into their bedroom, somewhere I hadn't dared to enter in years. The air smelled faintly of lavender and something colder, more sterile, like secrets. I searched drawers, then behind the wardrobe, tapping on the panels for anything hollow. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed a warped floorboard near the base of the window. I pried it up with the edge of a ruler. Inside was a weathered envelope, yellowed with age, addressed in a careful hand. To Eleanor. If anything happens to me. My mother's name. I opened it with trembling fingers. The letter was from William Hargrave. He spoke of fears for his life, that he'd uncovered corruption within the council, including his former friend, Edward Maynard. My father. He wrote of plans to expose them, but he feared betrayal from someone close. Someone he once trusted completely. At the end, his words grew messier, as if written in haste. If Eleanor is reading this, I beg you, don't trust Edward. He's more dangerous than you know. And if you have our child, keep her safe. Keep her away from all of it. The page slipped from my fingers. Our child. My throat tightened. My vision blurred. Was I not my father's daughter? I stumbled back, the letter clutched in my hand, the edges damp with sweat. Everything tilted, my family, my identity, my entire life built on a lie. I didn't hear the footsteps behind me until it was too late. The door creaked. My mother stood there. Her face was pale, lips tight, eyes unreadable. "So," she said softly, "you found it." She stepped into the room, shutting the door behind her. "I was hoping you never would." My heart raced as I held the letter in my hands, not sure whether to tear it apart or to try to make sense of its cryptic words. My mother stood still, her gaze fixed on me. Her usual elegance was gone. She was just a woman caught in the chaos of her own choices. I don't understand, Mum," I stammered, trying to steady my voice. "What is this?"
Why didn't you tell me?
She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. It was as if the weight of the years was pressing down on her, and she didn't know where to begin. "Eleanor," she began softly, "there are some things that are too dangerous to tell. Some truths, they can destroy everything." She stepped forward slowly, reaching out to take the letter from my trembling hands. Her fingers brushed mine, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I was frozen, stuck in the storm of my emotions. "Your father, Edward," she said, her voice shaking now. "He was never the man you thought he was. I married him because I believed in his vision for our future. But I didn't know then what I know now, what he was really capable of." I felt my stomach lurch. "What are you saying? That you knew? You knew all along?" "No," she whispered, her eyes full of sorrow. "I didn't know everything, but I knew enough. Edward isn't just a politician. He's tied to something much darker. The corruption William spoke of, it was never just about the council. It was about power. And when you seek that much power, you start making deals with the devil." I shook my head, trying to process it. "And William? He knew about all of this?" My mother nodded.
He did.
"He tried to warn me, tried to warn us. But by then, Edward had already sealed our fate. He had to go." Her voice broke as she spoke. I felt a chill run down my spine.
Go?
"You mean?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, he was killed. The people your father works with, they'll stop at nothing to protect their secrets." I staggered back, the room spinning. "And you?" I couldn't finish the thought. My own mother, complicit in all of this? "I didn't have a choice, Eleanor," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I tried to keep you safe. I tried to keep you away from it all. But you're too close now. They'll come for you, too. And I can't stop it anymore." I took a step back, my mind reeling. "What do you mean? Who will come for me?" She looked at me with fear in her eyes. "There are people in this world who will do anything to protect their secrets, even kill. And your father, he's one of them." I felt the world crashing down around me. Everything I thought I knew about my family, my life, was a lie. My father wasn't the man I'd grown up believing in. And my mother, she wasn't the woman I thought she was either. "Where is he now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother turned away, unable to meet my gaze. "He's already made arrangements. You're going to have to leave. You're not safe here anymore." The weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a surge of panic. "Leave? But where will I go?" "There's a place," she said, her voice distant, as if she was speaking from a place far away. "It's the only way you'll survive." I swallowed hard, the fear rising in my chest.
"Tell me."
"I'll give you the address. But you have to leave now before it's too late." I stared at my mother, still unable to grasp the magnitude of everything she had just told me. And yet, something deep inside me knew she was right. The world I thought I knew was gone. The truth had shattered it. I didn't have a choice. "Okay," I whispered, my voice shaky. "I'll go. But you have to tell me everything, Mum. No more secrets." She nodded, tears running down her face. "I will. I promise." The night felt heavier than usual, as if the sky itself were pressing down on me, suffocating me with its darkness. I could hardly breathe. The weight of the revelations, the truth about my father, and the looming danger that seemed to be chasing me had left me with a pit in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I stood in front of the house, packing my belongings in a hurry. My mother had given me the address of the safe house, but there was no time to think about what I was leaving behind. It all felt like a dream. No, a nightmare. The life I had built, the family I had trusted, had all been lies. I wasn't even sure who to trust anymore. "You have to go now, Eleanor." My mother's voice broke through my thoughts. Her tone was urgent, almost pleading. She was standing in the hallway, her eyes filled with guilt and fear. "I'm ready," I said, my voice barely a whisper. The fear in my chest was overwhelming, but it was mixed with a sense of determination I had never felt before. "Take care of yourself," she added softly, her eyes full of regret. "And don't come back. Not yet. Not until it's safe." I nodded, my heart aching at the thought of leaving her behind. But I knew this was the only way. I couldn't stay. Not with what I now knew. I grabbed the bag, my hand shaking, and walked out the door. The air was cold, biting against my skin as I stepped into the night. The streets were quiet, too quiet, like the calm before the storm. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every sound a warning. I reached the car parked at the curb, my hand still trembling as I fumbled for the keys. I hadn't driven in days, but my instincts kicked in, and I started the engine, pulling out of the driveway with the faintest sense of urgency. The streets of London seemed endless as I drove through them, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making sense. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting someone to be following me, but I saw nothing.
Not yet.
I drove for what felt like hours, through quiet roads and empty towns, until I reached the place my mother had described. The safe house. It was tucked away in the countryside, hidden from the world, a place where I could be safe. I pulled up to the small cottage, its windows dark, the air thick with silence. The front door creaked open as I approached, and I stepped inside cautiously. The house was empty, save for a single figure standing by the fireplace. "Eleanor." His voice was low, calm, but there was an underlying tension in it that I couldn't ignore. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. It was William. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his eyes dark and unreadable. "It's not safe." "Then why did you give me the address?" I asked, trying to mask the confusion and fear in my voice. "Why are you here?" He stepped closer, his expression hardening. "Because I'm not the only one who's been keeping secrets, Eleanor. There's a lot more going on here than you realize. A lot more than you're ready for." I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. "What do you mean? What's going on?" He shook his head slowly. "You're caught in something much bigger than yourself. And the only way to get out of it is to leave everything behind. Your family, your name, everything." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "I don't understand."
Why now?
"Why didn't you tell me sooner?" William's gaze softened, just for a moment. "Because I couldn't. I was trying to protect you. But now it's too late. You have to make a choice, Eleanor. A choice that will change everything." I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest. The choice he was offering was impossible. How could I leave everything behind? My family? My life? But as I looked at William, I realized he wasn't lying. This was bigger than I could ever have imagined. "What happens if I stay?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He hesitated, then spoke, his voice steady but heavy with truth. "If you stay, they'll come for you. And there's no guarantee you'll survive it. The only way out is to disappear. To become someone else." I felt the weight of his words settle over me, a crushing weight I could hardly bear. "And if I leave, what happens then?" "You live," he said simply. "But it's not a life you'll ever be able to return to." My mind spun, torn between the life I had known and the uncertain future William was offering. But in that moment I knew I couldn't stay. I had to leave. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the cottage, the cool night air biting at my skin. I didn't look back. I couldn't. As I drove away, I realized something. I wasn't just running from the past. I was running toward something new, something unknown. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know what the future held. But I was ready to find out.